The studio was buzzing before the show even started. A-list guest. Sold-out audience. Everyone knew the energy would be sharp, fast, fun, the kind of interview where clever jokes outshone sincerity, and silence was the enemy. Tom Hardy sat alone in the guest chair, back straight, legs relaxed. He didn't fiddle with the mic clipped to his blazer or shift nervously under the lights. He looked as always composed, unreadable. But not cold. He just didn't come to perform. His outfit was simple. Dark jeans. Fitted black t-shirt under a charcoal jacket. Clean. No flash. But what stood out, what always did, was the thin silver cross around his neck. It wasn't tucked in. It wasn't loud. Just there. Visible. Intentional. The host quick-talking, crowd-savvy, known for his light roasting of even the biggest stars, started with charm. So Tom, you've played soldiers, gangsters, superheroes, and even a guy who talks to symbiotes. Is there any role that doesn't come with a punch to the face? The crowd laughed. Tom grinned slightly, replied dryly, sure. But then no one pays to watch it. Laughter again. Smooth rhythm. They were enjoying him. Minutes passed. Funny questions, half-serious answers, witty jabs. Then the host leaned in. The room leaned with him. He pointed casually toward Tom's chest, the silver glint catching the light, and the cross, he said with a lopsided smile. Is that for a role too? Or just a bit of dramatic flair? The audience chuckled. Not cruelly. Just following the tone. The way they're trained to, but Tom didn't laugh. He didn't touch the cross. Didn't joke back. Didn't deflect. With a smirk that he sat still, and looked at the host straight, steady, quiet. No, Tom said. His voice dropped into something different now. Not performative. Not confrontational. Real. That's not for a role. The smile on the host's face faltered, but he tried to recover. Just wondering. Thought maybe it was, part of the look. Bit of edgy mystique. Tom blinked once. Slowly, I wore this the night I walked out of a hotel room that almost became my last, he said. The room shifted. I'd spent 2 days in there. Curtains drawn. Didn't recognize the man in the mirror. Didn't want to. I didn't plan on walking back out. You could feel the air in the studio tighten, like every person suddenly forgot they were watching television, but it was there. Tom continued, motioning gently toward the cross. On the floor. Just lying there. Like it was waiting. I picked it up. Not because I believed it would fix anything. But because I needed something to remind me that I still mattered to something. Anything. Now the host said nothing. Tom didn't stop. I've carried it ever since. Not for show. Not for image. I wear it because some nights I still need to remember that I made it out. His voice didn't rise. He didn't try to land a punchline. He just let the words settle like dust finally finding the ground. Then he leaned back in his chair. Looked at the host once more. And added, without bitterness, you don't have to get it. I'm not asking you to, but maybe next time, don't joke about the things someone might be using to hold their life together. Silence. No one moved. No one clapped. No one laughed, and for the first time that night, even the cameras seemed unsure where to look. Tom didn't mind the silence. He was used to it, but this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt heard. When the studio lights dimmed for the commercial break, it usually meant chaos, camera repositioning, assistants rushing in, makeup touch-ups, background music humming. But not this time. No one moved, the air didn't just go quiet, it held still. Like the whole room was waiting for permission to exhale, Tom remained seated. His posture unchanged. No anger in his face, no smugness, no performance. Just a stillness so deep, it spoke louder than anything he could have added. A stillness that didn't ask to be respected but made you feel wrong for not doing so. That he didn't touch the cross around his neck. Didn't hold it up. Didn't explain it further. He had already said what needed to be said. And in doing so, he'd left behind something unshakable. Across from him, the host looked smaller now. Not physically, just less certain. His signature smirk had evaporated. He kept his gaze low, fingers fidgeting on the desk like someone who'd suddenly realized he was out of his depth. For the first time in a long time, maybe, he didn't have anything clever left to say, and the audience, they weren't just watchers anymore, they were witnesses. Some sat with their heads bowed. A woman in the third row clutched a pendant from under her sweater. A teenager who'd been laughing earlier was now blinking quickly, like he wasn't sure why his throat had tightened. Tom didn't notice it all, or maybe he did. But he didn't respond. He didn't need to. The room itself had already answered. The moment hadn't ended, it had expanded. What began as a joke at the expense of something small, a chain, a cross, a man's faith, had become something no one could laugh away. It had turned into a shared understanding, that we all, at some point, hold on to something, not because it's trendy, but because without it we fall. When the cameras came back on, the host cleared his throat and offered a line that was supposed to ease them back into the show. "We're back," he said, slower now. "And we're honored to continue our conversation with Tom Hardy, who just reminded us that some things don't need to be explained." Tom said nothing. He just nodded, and somehow, that was enough. No one applauded. No one shouted. The audience sat like they had just come out of a sacred place, not a studio. Some with their hands in their laps. Some blinking more than usual. One older man stood near the back, not leaving, just watching. As if something had opened in him that hadn't moved in years, Tom walked off quietly. No autograph line. No camera swarm. No post-show buzz, just a hallway. Quiet shoes on studio floors, and people leaving, not hyped but humbled. He didn't hand out notes. Didn't leave a message behind. Didn't gift anyone his cross or quote a verse. He just didn't take it off. Didn't hide it. Didn't reach for it like a prop, and that was enough to say more than any speech ever could. Tom didn't speak to anyone as he left the studio. He didn't pause in the corridor for polite conversation, didn't exchange forced handshakes or mutter the usual, "Thanks for having me." The only sound that followed him down the hallway was the soft tap of his boots on the polished floor and the quiet rustle of his jacket, moving as he walked without hurry, without a glance back. There were people stationed near the exit, PR staff, stage assistants, a security guard or two. They looked at him differently now. Not with fear, or awe, or even curiosity. Just quietly. Like they were still processing what had happened, and didn't want to ruin it with words. One of them, a young intern barely out of college, almost asked for a photo, hand halfway into their pocket to reach for their phone. But then they saw the way Tom was walking. Not heavy. Not tense. Just full of something weightier than image. And the hand stayed down. Outside, the air was cold. Early evening. Clouds hung low over the city like they were waiting to cry. But Tom welcomed the chill. It felt honest. Not like the glare of cameras. Not like artificial heat from studio lights. This cold didn't ask anything of him. It just was. He crossed the street without his driver. Walked to the corner cafe. Not because he was hungry. Not because he needed to be seen, but because he needed the quiet to continue. Inside, the place was nearly empty. Two students in the back, talking softly over open laptops. A man near the window reading a book, one hand wrapped around a chipped mug. The barista looked up, recognized him but said nothing. Only nodded. Tom nodded back that he ordered a tea, sat down at the farthest table from the door, and breathed, not like someone escaping, like someone who had just come out of water. His phone buzzed in his jacket. Messages. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. He didn't check. Not because he didn't care. But because none of those people were in the room when it happened, when everything changed. He reached into his shirt, not dramatically, just instinctively, and touched the cross. His fingers didn't grip it like armor. They just rested there. Steady. Like they'd done 1,000 times before, in darker rooms, with no lights and no audience, and then slowly, quietly someone sat down 2 tables away. Not facing him. Not looking directly. Just, nearby. Tom didn't flinch, because this wasn't attention. This was presence. Across the cafe, another man looked up from his book and gently pulled his sleeve down, revealing a small tattoo on his wrist. A cross. Different style. Same meaning, and a moment later, one of the students glanced toward Tom, then opened her backpack and reached in. Not for her phone, for a folded piece of cloth. She pulled it out. A scarf, wrapped around a small wooden cross. She laid it gently on the table beside her. Not to show off. Not to challenge, just to say, me too. None of them spoke. No words were needed. Something had been torn open back in that studio, not wounded, but freed. And now it was spilling out into the world. Quietly. Without credit. Without plan. Tom sat still, and in his stillness, he realized, he hadn't just said something brave. He had given people permission to carry what they carried. To not tuck it away. To let it show, not because it made them holy, or better, but because it kept them human. He finished his tea in silence, not the silence of isolation, the silence of understanding. When he stood to leave, no one stopped him. But as he walked past the man with the tattoo, the man looked up. Their eyes met for just 1 second, and the man didn't say, "Thank you." He just nodded slowly, like someone who had waited years to be seen. Tom stepped back out into the street. The sky was darker now. A light drizzle had begun, brushing his face like a whisper. He didn't pull his collar up. He didn't rush. The city moved around him, but nothing could move through him. He was walking through a world where something had shifted, and he didn't need to own it. He had simply said the truth, and now that truth belonged to everyone who had ever felt the same. Not a symbol, not a savior. Just a man who refused to hide the one thing that had helped him survive, and because of that, helped others feel like they didn't have to hide either. Tom didn't post about it. Quotes. No cryptic Instagram captions. No apology tweets, no debates, no clever retweets with fire emojis. While media outlets clipped the moment, titled it everything from "Tom Hardy silences talk show host" to "Faith on Air, the cross that spoke louder than fame," Tom himself said nothing, because he didn't need to. The moment had already left him. It belonged to everyone else now, and they carried it in ways he never saw coming. 3 days later, in a coffee shop on the outskirts of Leeds, a middle-aged man reached into his wallet to pay. A young barista, early 20s, tattoos, rings, tired eyes, spotted the silver cross on his chain. "That's nice," she said, genuine but quiet. He hesitated, then smiled. "Tom Hardy made me remember why I still wear it." She blinked. "You saw that interview?" He nodded. Didn't think I'd cry in my living room over a cross and a sentence. She nodded slowly. Then reached under her hoodie and showed her own small, bronze, worn. They didn't say anything else, but both of them left the conversation feeling a little lighter. A little more allowed. At a secondary school in Manchester, a teenage boy, the one who used to hide the chain under his collar, finally let it rest outside his shirt. Just once. He was shaking a little as he walked down the corridor. Two kids noticed. One smirked. Whispered something, but a girl passing by, who usually didn't say a word to anyone, turned and said calmly, "You don't have to believe in what it means. But maybe respect that it means something." That afternoon, the boy kept the chain out, and never hid it again. In a prison library in Liverpool, an older inmate was watching the interview on a grainy TV. He sat still the whole time, arms folded, face unreadable. But after it ended, he stood up, walked to the book cart, and quietly asked the guard, "You still got that Bible I turned in last year?" The guard raised a brow. "Thought you were done with that phase." The man didn't look defensive. He just said, "Maybe I'm not." In New York, a priest saw the clip online, shared it with no caption. Within hours, people who hadn't been in his church in years started showing up, not to talk, just to sit. In Berlin, someone painted a mural of Tom's silhouette. Nothing flashy. Just his outline, his face half-shadowed, and around his neck, a simple silver cross. Underneath, one sentence in 3 languages, "You don't have to get it. But maybe don't joke about what kept someone alive." And back in London, in that same studio where it all began, something changed. Not the set. Not the lights, the host. That he didn't publicly apologize. That he didn't need to, because his next guests noticed something different. That he interrupted less. That he asked deeper questions. That he stopped making easy jokes about people with faith. One guest, a poet, mentioned how she lights a candle every morning and prays for clarity. She flinched slightly after saying it, expecting sarcasm, but the host only nodded and said, "That makes sense. Sometimes the world's just too loud to hear anything without fire." She blinked, and smiled. As for Tom, he never brought it up again. That he didn't repeat himself in other interviews. That he didn't monetize it or wear the cross in bigger chains or stylized gold. That he kept it silver, small, exactly the same. That he went on acting, filming, training, living, but something had shifted around him. Not in noise, not in fame, but in the way people looked at him, not like a celebrity, not like an icon, but like someone who had spoken something they'd only ever whispered to themselves in the dark. And years from that day, far from the studio, far from the echo, a man would sit on his own bed, alone in a moment of unraveling, holding a silver cross in his hand. Not for religious reasons, not for rules, but because something he saw once reminded him, "You don't need to explain what saved you, you just need to keep carrying it, and maybe, just maybe, by not hiding it, you help someone else finally stop hiding too." No one talked about it openly. There were no trending clips under his name. No headlines dissecting what he said. No interviews about faith or that silver cross. And because of that, because it didn't explode, he knew something real had happened. What was said didn't go to noise. It went to silence, and stayed there. The change came in small things. He didn't go looking for them. He just started seeing differently. On his next film set, the first assistant director, a man he remembered as loud and always sarcastic, didn't make a single joke when a grip quietly crossed himself before the scene. The same man who used to mock anything spiritual just stood still. No one laughed, and Tom didn't step in. He didn't nod. He didn't speak. He simply noticed. One evening at the gym, a guy known for blaring music and mocking people with religious tattoos paused as a teenager placed his necklace, a small cross, into a locker before working out. "Don't hide it," the man said softly. "If it's with you, It matters. Tom overheard it by chance that he didn't comment, that he didn't smile, but something settled in him like gravity. At a hotel lobby another week, two men argued, one older, agitated, sneering, the other, a young employee doing his best to stay calm. Tom passed them both without slowing, but he noticed the cross around the younger man's neck, that he noticed it wasn't tucked in, and when he glanced back a moment later the argument had died. The tension was gone, and the chain still rested above the shirt. None of it was said out loud. No one mentioned Tom's name. No one said, "Because of you." But he knew, because silence behaves differently when it starts to echo with meaning. One morning, in the trailer before a shoot, Tom buttoned his shirt slowly. The same shirt. The same mirror. The same cross, resting in its usual place. That he didn't look at it for validation, that he looked at it to remember. He was still the man who survived what tried to destroy him, and he was no longer ashamed of what held him together, not because the cross was magic, but because not hiding it had once saved him. Later that day, on set, someone asked Tom, "Do we keep the cross for the character, or take it off?" He didn't hesitate. Leave it. That it doesn't get in the way. That it belongs. No one asked again, because by now, they all understood. He didn't wear it to say something, that he wore it because once upon a time, silence and that cross kept him standing, and maybe no one would ever repeat that aloud, maybe no one would ever thank him, but he knew, it works. No applause. No slogans. No proof needed, just the quiet fact that fewer people laugh first now and more people stop hiding. Tom never called it faith. That he never tried to define it. Never joined panels or gave interviews about spirituality. If anyone tried to label him Christian, Catholic, believer, survivor, he'd shake his head with a soft shrug and say, "Names aren't the point. Survival is." And he'd leave it at that. That it was a cold Tuesday morning, deep into another project. The kind of morning where everything felt heavier, the script, the silence on set, even the air. The story he was filming this time was darker than usual, not action, not prestige. A man unraveling. Tom didn't play those characters. That he remembered them. Between takes, he sat alone in a folding chair. No phone. No mirror. Just him and that familiar stillness. The cross hung under his black t-shirt, invisible to everyone but him. Someone on the crew noticed him sitting like that. A young camera assistant. 21, maybe. New to the business. Always quiet. He'd been watching Tom all week, not with fan worship, but with that strange kind of awareness only people who have been through something recognize in each other. At lunch, the kid didn't say much. But as they stood near the food table, he asked without looking up, "Do you ever think, if you took it off, you'd forget?" Tom didn't ask what it meant. That he already knew. That he answered without thinking, "I think if I ever believed I didn't need it, that's when I'd be in trouble again." The kid nodded. Didn't speak again, but when he turned, Tom caught a flash of a cloth cord around his neck. That it wasn't silver. That wasn't a cross, but it meant something. Tom didn't ask. That he just let the moment pass, like wind, soft, unnoticed, but real. It kept happening. In airports. On sets. In hotel gyms, gas stations, quiet diners at 3 a.m. People didn't rush to thank him. They didn't cry or post about it. They just looked differently at him. With recognition. With a silent, mutual truth between them, and every now and then, someone would subtly adjust a necklace. Or touch the spot just above their heart. And not say a word. That he started noticing that some people who used to mock began asking gentler questions. "Do you wear it for someone? Does it still mean what it used to? Has it changed?" He'd answer simply, "For someone." "Yeah, me, does it still mean the same thing?" "No. It means more, and no, it hasn't changed." "I did. That was always the key that it wasn't about a symbol, that it was about who he had to become to keep wearing it without shame. That he remembered once, years back, when someone told him that silence is useless. Silence won't change the world, Tom. They'd said that. He didn't argue back then, but now all these years later he knew they were wrong. Because his silence did something, that it gave other people room to stop apologizing. To stop hiding. To stop pretending belief was something to be embarrassed about. He didn't have to speak for faith. He just had to stop covering it up, and in doing so, others started uncovering theirs. He grew older. Not all at once. Not visibly, but inside, quieter, steadier. He took fewer roles. Walked slower. Looked people in the eyes longer. The cross stayed, not as decoration, not as defiance, but as memory. Memory of the hotel room he nearly didn't leave, memory of nights with nothing but a bottle and a mirror, memory of choosing, once, to live even when nothing inside him wanted to. That cross, simple, plain, had been the only thing he didn't take off when everything else in his life had fallen apart. So now it wasn't about belief, or religion, or redemption. It was about truth. And long after he was gone, long after films changed, audiences shifted, generations passed, the moment lived on, not in museums, not in awards, not in fame, but in one small clip, buried deep in the archives of a talk show that had long gone off air. Just a man, with a voice steady and low, saying 7 words that no one expected would last. Maybe don't joke about what kept someone alive. And in that quiet, lasting echo, some kid on a dark night might stumble across it, and reach for something. A chain, a cord, a coin, a prayer, a reason, and stay, because of a man who didn't raise his voice, but kept wearing the one thing that reminded him and everyone else that staying is strength, the end, and for someone else out there the beginning.